What's up, what's up? Welcome to another episode of All Over Voiceover with Kip VH. I'm your host, Kip VH, and joining me in the studio at the lovely Juice Studios in Santa Monica, California, the lovely, the talented Ratana. Thank you so much for being here.
Yay! Hi, everybody, and thank you for having me.
Of course.
It's so much fun, and it's such an honor. Thank you.
Oh, dude. I mean, we've known each other for... I feel like we've known each other probably longer than we have. But like from taking classes together, but then also being from the Midwest.
Yep.
Well, I mean, how'd you? Where are you from? Let's start from what
So
part?
we'll start at the very beginning.
Yes.
I grew up just outside of Detroit, Michigan, so good old Midwestern stuff.
Yeah. What part were you in?
Just outside of Detroit, so it's a town called Troy.
Yeah.
It's about 20 minutes, north.
Yep. Right off the 75.
Right off 575.
By the Somerset collection.
Yes, that's exactly right. Like my malls of choice: Oakland Mall, Somerset, and what was the mall in Sterling Heights?
Oh,
Lakeside
shoot.
Mall.
That's it. That's it. I do enjoy 12 Oaks.
Oh, that was a little
Oaks,
far for us.
I understand.
It was a little far.
I understand.
But that was a good one.
It is. That was where I bought my engagement ring to Sherry. Actually, it was at the Rogers and Holland at the 12 Oaks Mall.
Oh, that's lovely.
Anyway, sorry. So you grew up in Troy.
So I grew up in Troy, and voiceover was sort of like a distant thing because at the time we didn't have the technology we have now.
Yeah.
I would just watch cartoons on TV like every kid in her pajamas with a bowl of cereal, and love Looney Tunes and the Smurfs and just, Muppet Babies, all of this stuff. And didn't know that people were behind that. Like, people talk for those things. And then when I got to college, I had a roommate who was a model. She did a lot of print work. She introduced me to her agent, and he was like, oh, that's called voiceover. There are people who do that, and you need a demo. And I was like, what, huh, what?
Was this still in the Midwest?
This was still in the Midwest. I was going to college. I was at Michigan State, so I was in East Lansing.
Okay.
And I didn't know that was a thing, but it still felt really far away to me. I didn't understand it, couldn't wrap my head around it. And then fast forward many years later, I had, at that point I graduated from school. I had a career in consulting.
What were you doing? What does that mean?
So I got a real job, quote unquote, after undergrad. And I worked in management and IT consulting, which is basically, we used to call it being doctors for businesses.
Okay.
So we would go into a business, fresh-faced 20-year-old me would go into a business and talk to somebody 3 times my age and tell him how he should be running his business.
Gotcha.
Which went over really well.
So what happens? Like a company calls your firm and then you come and represent.
And so they would come in and they would hire a team of us, and we would all come in and, with our little laptops and, our little spreadsheets and like kind of look at how a business ran. So, just like a doctor would like take your pulse and like listen to you breathe and all this stuff, we would do the same thing for a company. So except they would look at like, how do you sell a product? Or how do you make a product from like the idea all the way to like manufacturing, all the way to getting it on a store shelf. And is there a way we can make it faster, cheaper, better? Can we use technology to enable it? Like this was very, high level thinking at the time.
Yeah.
And it was a really interesting training ground because it was the first time for me where it really hit home that I needed to speak up in the room. So my name is Ratana. It is not a very traditional Midwestern name. And I remember having a boss and a mentor just kind of coach me very casually about, how to be seen in the room and how to be professional and to make sure that your voice was heard because there are biases everywhere. And the bias at that time was if I did not speak up and I have a name like mine, they would think that I was a programmer from India that was taking away a job. And that was a very real threat at the time, or a feeling of threat.
Were you consistently walking into rooms where you were considered like there were strikes against you initially?
I think people are very good about masking that. It doesn't come out until a little bit later. They're very kind in the beginning. I think for me it was just like, how do I do well at this? Because I liked it. I was good at it. And I didn't want anything that I was born with that I cannot control to be something that hinders me from progress.
Yes.
Let's say that. And so it was just a very conscious effort, like, okay, so how do I do this and what do I do? And, it just means that you have to work a little harder and you work a few more hours than everybody else. And you are like constantly kind of pushing and looking for like, okay, how can I really make this better, in a way that somebody who is 2 or 3 times my age will actually respect my opinion.
Yeah.
And have that discussion. And I think, because I'm kind of an old soul, so it worked and it was fine. And I got to do some really interesting things.
How did you find your voice? How did you find speaking up in the room? What was that process for you?
I think for me, it was knowing that I had a clear goal. Like, you had a project, they put something in front of you, and it's kind of like when you make a film or something, like you have a goal. You got to make a project. You got to make a film. It's going to go on a screen. There's a certain date attached to it. So same thing there. You have a project. You have a goal. They want to save X amount of money, or they want to, carve out so much extra time, or grow the business by X percent. And so you kind of work backwards from there. Like, what do I need? How do I need to do this? What is in my way from getting there? And how do I make those things in my way not be in my way anymore? And so after a while, you start to like form an opinion of how it should go. And, I was lucky because I had great managers and mentors who would cede the floor and allow me to speak, and say, okay, well, this is what I think. Like, you can take my advice or not take my advice, but this is what I think.
Yeah.
And more often than not, I'm further down in the weeds than they are. They're just going to say, go run with it.
Yeah.
And then I get to go run with it. And then, hopefully I do well with it. Sometimes you fall down with it. And then you ask for help and you figure out how to rejigger it.
Yeah.
But it's very much like what happens, when you're making a film or, putting together a project with a lot of people. You're constantly problem solving. And so then it's just about like, how do you express your opinion in a way that is heard, not necessarily controversial or confrontational, but allows people to choose on their own.
Yes.
And makes everybody feel empowered and good about the choice that they're taking. So I did that for a few years, and then I went off to grad school because at the time my goal was to be the best gosh darn brand manager I could be. And everyone I'd ever talked to in my internships and stuff at the time said, well, if you do that, you need to get an MBA. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm getting an MBA. And I moved to California.
That's what moved you out here.
That's what moved me out here. I had actually been up in the Bay Area working on a project there, and I realized, oh my gosh, California's amazing.
Yeah.
Kind of fell in love with it. And I got into school at UCLA and ended up starting the MBA program there.
No kidding.
Yeah. And it was, for me, it felt perfect, like sometimes you go someplace and it just feels like home and you don't know why. And that was UCLA, honestly. That was Los Angeles. Like I was there to interview for my MBA spot, and I had an hour to kill. Because here you're either late or you're super early for everything.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And so I had an hour to kill, so I'm like hanging out on the top of the Jant steps, and if you've never been to UCLA, it's at the top of a hill. There are a billion like brick line steps. It's beautiful. And so I'm just like sitting there, and on one side is a theater and on the other side is a library, and you just look down, and on a clear day you can see all the way almost to the ocean. And so that was that day for me, and I just took a breath and I was like, yep, this is where I need to be. And thank God the gods of admission also agreed, and they offered me the spot.
That's so great. I had a moment like that too. I mean, this place has always been a siren song to me.
Yeah.
From the Midwest, but like the first time I was out here on my own with my own agency, because I'd come out prior, maybe 20 some odd years before, for like a program through my college.
Oh, cool.
But I was out here to do a Pat Fraley workshop.
Oh, love him.
Oh, he's amazing. And I had time to kill, and I went on a hill in Culver City, and it was like a Wednesday at 2, waiting for my flight at 6, and like this hot air was blowing up the hill, but it was cool. And it was just this moment of, this is home.
Yeah.
And I haven't been home.
Yeah.
It's such a weird feeling.
Yeah.
I do find that transition to Los Angeles from Detroit in particular being a really smooth one because it's such an industry town.
It is.
And you spend so much time in your car in
Yes.
Detroit too.
It's also a car town, which is
Yeah.
helpful, even though I was never a car person, you know. But yeah, it's true because you're just used to driving.
Yeah.
You're used to figuring things out.
It's just spread out.
It's just spread out.
Right.
Lots of urban sprawl.
So you started UCLA.
Yeah.
What was your transition into? Well, I don't want to get ahead of myself. So
No.
what was that experience like getting your MBA?
It was good. It was, I mean, as much as advanced degrees are, like, you kind of go and invest a couple of years of your life going back to school. So there's that sort of mental transition because I had been working.
Yeah.
I'd been a 9-to-5er for a while. And so then you have to kind of get back in the discipline of like studying,
Yeah.
taking tests, like reading, just, gross amounts of textbook and theory and all this stuff. And, realizing that after a few years away, I wasn't as good a student as I thought I was. But I also did not plan to go back into consulting or like high finance, which are the industries where they care about your grades.
I see.
And so everything else was just, okay, I knew I wanted to do brand management. I wanted to work in marketing. I kind of knew vaguely like how to get there and how to point myself there and what classes and stuff I needed. So I just kind of systematically attacked it and did that. But then, on the other side, I was living in LA. I mean, it was the farthest from home that I've ever lived, other than studying abroad. Yeah. So it was a really lovely time to just grow up in a different way. You know, to learn how to adult in a brand new city, to make it feel like my own, to explore, to meet people, and to fall down and learn from that as well. And so, you're just kind of doing those things and checking those boxes. And eventually I ended up landing my quote-unquote dream job in corporate life, but it necessitated a move to Minneapolis.
Oh, wow.
So I moved to Minneapolis to take my dream job in the corporate world, and I worked for General Mills for a few years. And if you've ever been to Minneapolis, you know that the winters are
brutal.
Really, really cold.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think as much as I loved the company, I loved the work, and I loved the people that I worked with, I did not love the weather.
Yeah.
And the first winter, I went home for Christmas, and I had left my car in my apartment building, parked in this like big parking garage. And when I arrived home that Monday, I had to go right to work, and I got to my car and I had 2 flat tires, and it wouldn't start because it had been so cold that everything froze and imploded.
Oh my God.
And my first call was to AAA, and my second call was to my mother, and I was in tears.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why? Why is this happening? I don't understand. This city hates me.
Isn't that crazy? The company loves you. You love everybody you're working with, but the city...
but the city is like rejecting me. And it was just like a confluence of events, because I think when I moved there, like I got sick a bunch of times, and my apartment had issues and just all these little things, and I was like, this city is rejecting me. Like, I don't know why. And my goal was to be there for 5 years and then move wherever I wanted after that. I made it 2, maybe 3. I think it was 2. And then I was like, okay, no, I have to go. Like, I cannot stay. As much as I love this company and the people that I'm with, I just have to go. Yeah. So I wanted to come back to LA, and I did. And I found another corporate job that moved me back here. And then that's when, the kind of perfect storm started happening creatively, because one of my hobbies is salsa dancing. So,
really?
Yeah, like ballroom dancing, tango, all of that stuff.
That's awesome.
And so for a while, I was very heavy into that scene. And I would go dancing like pretty much any night of the week, as long as I didn't have something big the next morning.
Yeah. Like a big meeting
a big meeting
or something.
Or a presentation or, something where I had to like be on. But I would go dancing. And one of the dancers that was friends with me at the time, he had a day job just like I did. And one time we're dancing and he goes, I work in IT, but you know what I really want to do? And I said, what? And he goes, voiceover. And everything in my body just clicked. I was like, what? say that again. And then it became like every discussion. Anytime I would see him, we're out dancing or we're just chatting casually, I would ask him like, what classes are you taking? Like, what are you doing? And then he would start sending me like people's demos, or we would send clips, like not even YouTube, but like we would send clips of like favorite animation.
Yeah.
And it just became a thing. Like, so I started getting a little obsessed with it. And then finally, I think he got tired of me asking. And he just said, like, Ratana, just shut up and take a class already.
Right. Stop hobbying and put money
stop
on.
living through me. Like, just take the stupid class. And I was like, oh, yeah. So, okay.
But that's a thing. Like that's like the admission of taking something that you're excited about or a fan of, and then like taking
like you're
that
making
first
it real.
Yeah. It is.
And it's kind of scary.
Yeah.
Like taking those first steps, and then you're like, it's like you're saying there's something that like you want that you didn't know you wanted. Yeah. And then it's just kind of like waking up. And I was like, oh, okay. So I took a class.
Where did you take a class?
So I took a class with Dolores Deal. God rest her soul. She was like, I think 93 at the time. And blind as a bat, but her ears were still perfect. And so she had this intro class that was just kind of a survey course. You learned a little bit of animation, a little bit of commercial, a lot of mic technique. Yeah. And then just kind of methods, tactics for just sort of how to deal with things or how to approach breaking down character. It was like the first voice acting class that I had taken, and the first acting class I'd taken since I was in high school. Yeah. So it was just a really nice introduction. And then, afterwards you got a cassette tape of your recording.
Yes, you did.
And at that time, I did not know where to find a cassette tape. I think they were moldering on a bottom shelf at a Best Buy.
You had to buy a blank and bring your blank in. Kind of like now it's like bring a stick.
Yeah, and now you don't even bring a stick. They just send you a Dropbox.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So that was it. You had to bring in a cassette tape, and then I would go home and listen to the cassettes and try and work on it, and it became an obsession, really. And so if I wasn't dancing, I was spending all of my evenings after work in a class. So it was one of her classes or, a class at Voice Tracks or, anybody, and Pat Fraley's classes. Yeah. My weekends were taken, and then I got into improv. And so then it was improv and it was voice
Where
acting.
did you do improv?
So I did improv at the West Side Comedy Theater.
Oh, great.
And it was, the original theater was the West Side Eclectic. It was started by a classmate of mine at UCLA.
No kidding.
Mm-hmm. And I was so, just proud of him and them for starting this theater because he had done improv in New York, and then this was a thing he had wanted to do as a passion project. They built the theater. They built it from nothing. And then eventually they sold it to the guys who have it now, which is the West Side Comedy Theater, and they just celebrated 10 years. Freaking amazing.
That's so awesome.
And those guys have just grown it exponentially into this amazing beast. Yeah. And the community is beautiful, and they're just
Are you active with that community?
Not as much as I would like to be. Yeah. I actually really was, my kind of heyday was when they had just bought the theater. Okay. So I was one of the first house teams in that theater.
Awesome.
And we performed for about 4-ish years, and then I worked with another house team there for a little while longer, and then just the confluence of life and time. Yeah. And so I took a step back. But I still I love to support them. I like to go to shows. Yeah. I still recommend them to other people. And every once in a while I try and drop in and just take a class to warm up the muscles fresh. Because, 100%. You forget. Your body forgets.
It's super convenient and all that other stuff too, especially as for us as a West Sider.
Exactly. And as much as I pay respect and homage to the old IO and to UCB and all those things, sometimes it's far.
Sometimes. Yeah, you got to cross the 405 and get across. I'm teaching at Second City starting in May again, and
Awesome. What are you teaching?
Voiceover.
Nice.
I teach an intro to voiceover
That's
class.
Awesome.
And it's very much like what you just described of it's a smattering of different stuff, but the idea really is if you're new and don't know what the on-ramp looks like or how to get on, I always position it I'm like Richard Attenborough going, welcome to Jurassic Park.
Basically.
And and trying to, and really, part of the reason I'm doing it at Second City is I'm committed to this mission too of I want to keep it inexpensive.
Yes.
Because voiceover training in particular can be
pricey.
prohibitive. Yeah. So I like being like, hey, look, if you take my class and discover I really love audiobooks, then you're not going to spend $5,000 chasing voice matching.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So that's really the idea.
No, I think that's great. And that's kind of the way to do it too. It's like when you go to college, and now college is like this vocational thing. They're like, you need to know where you're going to go. Yeah. But you should have the opportunity to explore, right?
I agree.
You know, you should have the opportunity to say like, oh, I want to try medicine, and I want to try biology, and I want to try like sports, like whatever, business.
Because you will never get that opportunity in life without great financial cost or access. You know, you gotta hunt people down.
Absolutely. And acting, I think, is the same way.
Yeah.
And you know, voiceover is interesting because I feel like for a long time we were sort of the stepchild of the acting world.
Yeah.
And it's still acting.
Yes.
And so a lot of people who've come to me from the on-camera side of things and they ask about voiceover, they're like, oh, well, it's just voiceover. I'm like, no, it's still acting. You still need those chops because otherwise nobody's going to believe you and they don't get to see your pretty face. So I can't fake it with my face.
Right. Right. Exactly.
You hear everything.
Man. So talk to me about your process then from making this transition. It becomes your sole focus.
It becomes my focus. It's my obsession. It's my passion. I start to just dream about like, how can I build a life? Honestly, how can I build a life that I love? That I wake up and I look in the mirror every morning and I feel fulfilled. I feel creatively fulfilled. I feel intellectually fulfilled. And I make a decent enough living that I can keep a roof over my head and gas in my car and all that stuff. And, you know, I loved parts of corporate life, and at this point I had moved on to a different job, and to be honest, it was becoming very stressful. You know, so that particular company, the culture was a little bit toxic, and so, you know, you're constantly watching your back and you're always just on and crunching and moving. There's always some, you know, deadline or fire or whatever. And I was looking at this going, there's a better way to do this. There's a better way to do this. I know it can be done. And my first thought initially was, how can I just build like, what do they call it? Location independent life. I was working in international marketing. All of my clients, my internal clients, my colleagues were all overseas. And yet I still had to get in my car and drive through traffic and go to the South Bay and sit in a desk and stare at a wall. So I was like, well, how can I do this? And I did a little thought experiment, and I don't recommend this at home to everybody because this could get you fired. But I basically called in sick for a week and I worked from home. And I just kind of charted like, you know, how much more stuff am I getting done or how much less stuff am I getting done versus when I'm in the office and everybody's coming into my, you know, cubicle going, hey, did you see that episode of blah, blah, blah last night? And, oh, by the way, can I talk to you about this thing or the other project? And then you're constantly like switching tasks and you have that mental game that you're playing when you're trying to like refocus.
Yeah.
And it turned out I was a lot more efficient when I worked on my own because I'm still doing the stuff. I'm still interacting with all of my clients.
Yeah.
We're still getting a lot of stuff done. But there was still that need at the time for FaceTime. Like, what's the point of the FaceTime if nobody ever sees my face?
Right.
And then I thought, well, okay, how do I build this life that I want? If it's not coming from here, and I don't want the corner office in this world, what office do I want? And it became, voiceover. Because every time I stepped into a booth like this, or even a tiny little closet or a pillow fort, didn't matter. I was just like, I was a kid. I was like giddy. I was like, oh my God, I get to play. I am allowed to do this. And, you know, it's such a mental shift. Yeah. You know, especially coming from a very type A, very like in your head cerebral environment to come to a place like this where it's creatively focused. It's almost like heart centered in a way, and instinct centered. And so you're just letting those things play out. And so then I started, you know, kind of dreaming, what is that like? And it turned out, okay, no, this is a thing I want to do. I can't imagine how I have let myself not do this for so long. So I started putting the money away. I did my demos. I built this very rudimentary website on iWeb or whatever that was.
Yeah.
You know, like the most basic, as elegant as I could make it thing.
Right.
And, you know, God bless the marketing background, so it was very much on brand for me.
That's good.
You know, and then I just started shopping it around and, you know, getting recommendations. And I was fortunate to have a few people walk my demo into their agents. And
how did you get your demo produced? Did you self-produce it? Did you go to like Chuck and where'd you go?
Great question. I was not confident in my technical skills to self-produce. So I definitely thought it was worth the money and the time to get the coaching and make sure my acting chops were on point first.
Yeah.
And then once I felt comfortable with that, to go have somebody else produce my demo, because then I don't have to worry about what happens on the other side of the glass.
Yeah.
So Cynthia Sanjay and Chuck produced my animation demo.
Okay.
And then Susan Palio over at Voice Tracks West did my commercial demo. And you know, it was great. It was a wonderful process. It's very collaborative. You know, they're all really encouraging, kind of coaching people. So they're not going to let you fall, but they're also not going to let you put something on there that you cannot reproduce.
Yes, that's so important.
Because the problem with, I think, a lot of demos or a lot of people who do demos too quickly is you cannot reproduce that sound that you just marketed. And then there's somebody on the other side of the glass who gets frustrated because you're not as advertised, and they can't coach you into that. And if they can't coach you into that, they might end up replacing you, or they might not ask you back. You know, and your job is to be malleable, and to be directable, and to be able to reproduce the things that you say you can reproduce.
Yes.
You know, which is why I don't tell people that I am, you know, Cirque du Soleil tumbler. Because I can't do it. I will fall on my face.
That's right. That's why I don't tell people that either.
That is not a special skill on my resume.
That's right. I don't lie about my water skiing.
Right. You know, my swimming skills, laughable. So, you know.
But you got your materials produced.
But I got them produced. And, you know, I did it in the time that felt good for me.
Yeah.
You know, which is probably like still, you know, like all people who want to get their demos done yesterday, you know, like it was still probably a little bit later than I'd hoped, but it was when it needed to happen.
Well, I think that's really important to hear and reinforce. It's the thing I hear so often. We were talking before, we're on microphone, of people who ask advice and questions, and always the thing that they know that they need is an agent and a demo. But like those things are like what they want, like a headshot and a model agency, and it's like, it's not the same thing at all. You need to take that time.
Yeah, and you have to work on your craft.
Yes.
Like this is a craft, and it takes time and practice, and those 10,000 focused hours, you need them.
Yes.
You know, and it's not enough just to watch all of the animation or listen to all of the audiobook narration in the world. It's you have to practice it and hone it and listen back and play and experiment and fail and pick yourself back up and lather, rinse, and repeat until it becomes enough muscle memory in your gut and your heart and your brain that you're like, okay, now I feel good. Let's go do this thing. You know, and I just did a promo demo this year. I have been waiting years to do it. And it wasn't that I wasn't confident, you know, or didn't have the money or whatever, but it was just that like, those, you know, you just want to make sure you feel good in your body doing this stuff, and that you can reproduce it, and then that you have the right team behind you to make it happen.
Yeah.
And so, you know, finally everything came together, and I was like, yep, this is the time to do it. Let's go do it. Run.
So why a promo demo? Why an animation demo? Why you know, commercial demo?
Sure.
Like
Great questions.
I think not you know why. I know your skill set, and I have a suspicion for the answer, but I would rather hear your description.
Yeah, for sure.
Of the answer. Like what led you to a promo demo?
Yeah, so the commercial demo, I think, is the bread and butter of our work. So I think that was the first thing I did. You know, no matter what happens in the world, people are always producing commercials. Right now, the medium is changing. Like, has changed, is changing, will change. But there is always somebody selling something. So commercial demo, that was a no-brainer. Animation, because it is my blood. I want to do it. I want to be, like the Tara Strongs and Gray Griffins of the world, like all of those wonderful people that I grew up and came of age listening to. I want to follow in their footsteps.
Yeah.
And so that was the no-brainer for me.
Yeah.
The auxiliary path was to do a video game demo, because I also do, a handful of video games.
Yeah.
And I love doing them.
Yeah.
But, it will happen in its own time, or it won't. And I will decide that when I'm ready.
Yes.
And then the promo was because Cynthia Sanjay had actually recommended that I explore promo when I was working with her for the animation. And I had originally thought, like at the time, the only time you ever heard a woman doing promo was for the Lifetime Movie of the Week. And I was like, okay, well, that chick's got it. Like,
Yeah, that job's taken.
So how else do I do this? But I got in the booth, and she recommended some teachers, and I hired them. I took private lessons with Joyce Castellanos.
Oh, yes.
And Jean Cordes for a while. And then I jumped into some workouts, and I just fell in love with the challenge and the music of it.
Yeah.
And it because a lot of times you are working to time and to picture, and sometimes you're trying to like get in little bits, sound bites, they call them SOTs, from the actual show, but you're trying to tell a story in a very concentrated bit of time. And I loved the challenge of it.
Yeah.
I think it's just because I love musicals, I love music, and so it's just, for me, it felt like a really good progression. And, as time passed, like there are more places for a woman to play.
Yeah.
And more places for a woman with my voice to play, because I don't have the traditional like female smoky promo voice. I can drink all the whiskey in the world, which would be delicious, and I still wouldn't have that voice. But there are places for me to play, and even without that, there are other places where you can apply the learning. And so I've fallen into like dubbing, so like foreign language dubbing to English, and it's a similar skill set.
Really?
Because
Of course.
you're chasing a picture, and you're chasing somebody else's performance.
Yeah.
And, part of what you're doing is finding the rhythm of that piece or that character, putting yourself in her body or their story, and then writing it out.
Yeah.
So that you can be that character if you're, dubbing a character in a telenovela, or if you are, doing a promo, you're in that story, and you're telling it to your friend, your buddy, the person listening on the other side.
I really love that aspect about promo is that I think I was taking a workshop with Dave Walsh this past year, him and Mary Jo Smith. And it was about that very thing of like when you're doing a promo for a show on ABC, you are not some disembodied voice selling the show. You are a important part of that show. You're with those actors. You're with those
You
characters.
are a character as much as they are.
Yeah.
And you're the person who lets somebody in on that bit of knowledge. Like, hey, dude, did you know this? There's a new episode coming.
Right.
Like, and for me, if I'm living under a rock, oh really? I love that show. Let me go watch it.
Right. It's like you're the hand that reaches through the fourth wall and grabs the audience and says, "Come join us."
Right. Or you've never seen this before. Come on and watch.
You should see it. It's
right?
amazing. Yeah.
Very much like when your kid's running around in the yard and you're like, "Come on over here and play."
Right. Oh, it's so great.
Excuse me. Super fun. So that's how it's accidental evolution. But exactly where I wanted and needed to be. So
that's awesome. One of the things that I really like you wrote a piece for Backstage. You've been like you're active in your blog life. You share your journey. Like what's that about? Do you feel a calling to express what your journey is about?
Excuse me. Good question. I think I am the grandchild of teachers. I think my mother was very adamant that the one thing she could give me, if she could give me nothing else, was my education. And I think I took that to heart. So I tutored in school. I've mentored students. It's very much in my blood, in my DNA, to help other people on their journey and to educate people on what's going on. And I think if sharing a little bit of my experiences is helpful, in your journey or somebody who's listening to this in their acting journey, then I've done my job. It's great. I'm happy to help. I'm happy for me to stumble and fall and cry if that will save you the pain.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Because, then I did it for you. You don't have to do it.
Right.
You go make a different mistake.
And share it.
So we can all learn.
So we can all avoid that rock.
Exactly. And, and then, to be able to laugh at your mistakes and poke fun at them and share them with other people. So I think part of the reason why I was called to write about it and blog about it and, even to come here is just, I want to help. Like, I would love for other people to come into this business who are as dedicated and focused and talented as you are, as other people that you've had as guests, and know what they're really getting into. Yeah. I think the part that breaks my heart a little bit is, when I've mentored students who have this false notion that getting into voiceover is like the golden ticket to winning the lottery. Yeah. And I can just do this stuff in my pajamas at home in the middle of nowhere, wherever you are. And you can, to a limit.
Yes.
But if you have bigger dreams than that limit, then you also have to know what that is. And what it means to get there and what kind of work and sacrifice and compromise and juggling that all takes. Yeah. So I one thing that just came out, and I don't know when this is going to air, but the Beyonce documentary on Coachella, Homecoming.
Yeah.
This is a case study on what it takes to perform at that level. And if you have any ambition of getting even like a tenth to where she is, not just the stage show, which is amazing, but the stuff she does behind the scenes and the work and the focus and the sacrifice that she does to get herself from postpartum, having had twins, to being in rocking dancing shape, to command that stage 2 weekends in a row. That's a lot of work.
That's a ton of work.
That's a lot of work. And she's not just performing. She's, directing and producing, and they were producing this thing at the same time. And you don't even think about all of the different hats she has to wear. So how many times does she have to sort of switch focus? Yeah. Like today I'm dancing. Today I'm working on the singing. Tomorrow I'm working on the production and figuring out the costumes. It's the same thing here. Yeah. And, my biggest thing is because I switched careers. Like I took a hard left turn out of corporate life to become creative and become an actor. And that was a journey, and that's a process, and it's a mental one, and it's a heart journey. And you have to be prepared for all of the ups and downs that come with it. And so part of the reason why I write and why I have these conversations is because I want you to understand what that takes. And I want you to know for yourself if you're capable of it. Yeah. Not everybody is, and that's okay. Right. Sometimes it's enough to know that you tried. Yeah. And for other people, it's, no, I have to do this. And for me, it was, this is the thing I cannot not do. Yeah. So if I turn this off right now, I would probably fall over and die. Bye, everybody. But
I feel that same way. Yeah. And that knowing what it's like, I really appreciate 100% of what you just said. That sense too of people who think that it's just once I have a reel and once I have an agent, I'm done. I've achieved. I'm in Wonka's factory now. And I just have to not drink from the chocolate river. It's like, no, man.
Augusta, sweetheart.
Oh, no. He'll be fine. The rest of the show will be us acting out the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Violet, you're turning violet,
There's no earthly way of knowing. But what you just said about Beyonce, and like while you were describing that, some of the images that were coming to my mind were some of the things that have motivated me. Like it's like a behind the scenes documentary on the making of Death Race with Jason Statham, and he's walking around in the set, and craft service is walking around, and the lady they're all eating cake. Okay. And he turns to the camera, he's like, "Yeah, everyone's eating cake. Look what I got: cauliflower and turkey breast. Enjoy your cake." But like, that level of sacrifice to
Absolutely.
be able to do the
Yeah.
bareback pull-ups that he does
Yeah.
for that reason, or all that other stuff. But that is getting to a certain place doesn't secure anything.
No.
And it what it takes is your willingness to keep grinding and to not get discouraged when you make that discovery.
Right. Well, and I think we think life is a series of the ends, right? Like, I get the demo, the end, I'm made. I get the agent, the end, I got it. It's not. It's a series of what's next.
Yeah.
Like, what's the next thing? It's a new beginning. You know, I get the demo, that begins another process. I get the agent, that begins another process.
Yeah.
I got dropped by my agent, or I need a new agent, that's another process. So your path could be very circuitous. It could be a straight line. We don't know. But you just have to understand, like, it may not be easy. It may not all be sunshine and rainbows. We would love it to be, but it's
Certainly.
not. And that, like, that's okay.
Yeah.
And that you're constantly just, like, asking yourself, okay, what's the next thing I need to do today? You know, and you understand this too. Like, we drive all over town. We're doing all of these things. You're constantly prepping. Plus, you have a family.
Yeah.
You know, you have other things that ask for your time and your attention and your energy. So we just constantly are pulling these things into and out of balance. And how do we do this day in and day out? And sometimes all you can do is, you know, get out of your bed and not be in pajamas.
Right?
And do one thing.
Yeah.
Like one little thing. But there is no the end,
Right.
right? It's just a to be continued.
And you celebrate every single one of those victories
Every
because
single one.
when they come, like,
Man.
yeah, and you know, and it is the little stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes getting an audition, like for me, getting an audition for a thing
Mm-hmm.
that I don't want to jinx it one way or the other, whether I'll book it or not,
Right.
but just to be in the mix and to be considered and
Yeah.
to be able to participate.
Yeah.
Going, boy, I know so many people have not.
Right?
So many people want to and don't have this copy in their inbox.
Right? And it's a privilege
Yeah,
to do what we do.
that's right.
You know, it's a privilege, it's an honor. Even, you know, like what we might think is like the dumbest piece of copy ever is still like the most amazing thing that we get to do, because it's the difference between you and I sitting here and me still sitting in that cubicle,
That's right.
right? Or, you know, whatever your office day to day is.
Yeah, that's so true. What? That was great. What is your process when that copy arrives in your box? How do you approach a piece of, let's say, for now, let's say a piece of commercial copy for this box of Kleenex?
So the first thing I do is just kind of read through the email. There's usually some specs in there, some specifications. So it's instructions on how they like it to be submitted, what kind of a voice are they looking for, is there a certain tone? You know, if I know the brand, what do I know of the brand?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and this is my marketing brain
Yeah.
clicking in, is like, I used to be the client on the other side of the glass. I used to hire the people in this room or on a commercial set. So I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of the agency and the client who are hiring these people. What are they looking for? What are they working on? Did they just change agencies? So maybe they're just looking for a whole sea change. Like they just want something completely different from their last voice. Or, you know, maybe their last voice, like, she decided to start a farm in Nebraska and she moved away. And they just want to keep going what she did.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's sort of the thought process I go through. I'll read through the copy a couple of times just to make sure I understand what they're looking for.
When you do that, are you and you're bringing your past experience as a marketing person to bear, which is fascinating, and how incredibly helpful too is like as a back skill set to be able to have that sense of what's going on
Yeah.
through that process. But what can you divine from the copy in that way? You know what I mean?
I think you can get a sense for like the tone and where the writer is going, what the brand wants. And then from there, I just start playing. You know, sometimes I'll just leave the microphone on and I'll just read through out loud. and it might be exactly what I want, or maybe not quite, and then I'll just kind of experiment. And for commercial copy, I feel a little more confident, right? So because you get it day in and day out, and after a while your chops are honed.
Yes.
And this is where, when you're just starting out, you have to read every day, and you have to make up commercial copy so that you get a feel for what that is like, or listen to other commercials and then just transcribe them so that you understand the rhythm of what a commercial is.
Yeah.
And even as we sort of change the nature of how we like to be sold to, those are trends. They ebb and flow. So right now, we don't want to be sold to.
That's why the non-announcer.
Right. Everything is non-announcer. Everything is conversational. Even the announcer stuff that says, buy this car for $0 down.
Right.
Is still a conversation.
That's right.
But
it was interesting. It was something that Sherry said to me the other day, that social media is the new word of mouth. Mm-hmm. It's just word of mouth. Yep. So that's still that advocacy of, like we were describing with promo before. Yeah. It's the exact same thing.
Come into my living room.
I love this thing. Yeah. You'll love it too, because
exactly.
I love you, and I know that you love this.
And right now, we're in an age where we need social proof. There's so much information out there, and there's so much media to consume that you could go down a rabbit hole for days just trying to pick the right brand of Kleenex, if you wanted to. Yeah. Right? I think about, like, my old roommate. She needed to buy a car. It took her 2 years to decide because there was so much information. Yeah. Like, how do you stop drinking from the fire hose? At some point, you just have to turn it off. Yeah. And make a choice.
Well, it's like going to emotion at that point, right? You just, what feels right.
Right. And that's the same thing, like, when you approach commercial copy or, like, even animation copy is, like, intellectually, I've been through the steps. I know what I need to do. At the end of the day, it just has to feel good. It has to feel good coming out of my mouth and out of my body. And sometimes I know it's not for me because I'll try it a couple times and I'll be like, it's not right. And I'll either send a note or I'll say, here it is, and you do what you want with it. It's fine. Yeah. But that's how it is. You just have to feel good in it. Yeah. And so that's kind of how I know I'm done. And I don't spend a lot of time on it because you can make yourself crazy. Yeah. That's like, I came in sweaty because I was spending a lot of time on it, making myself crazy. Yeah. And we've all had that conversation with, ourselves and with other actors who you're like, they spend like an hour Frankensteining something together. And at that point, you have to ask yourself the question, okay, if I had to work this hard for the audition and I booked it, can I actually reproduce this? If the answer is no, walk away with love and joy. Yeah. But if the answer is yes, then keep it going. Right. But sometimes the Franken-take is not the right thing to do.
And that's what I'll end up, like it happened the other day where I was in a session and we did our read and they were like, hang on, if I do it, and I was like, why don't you play me what you like from that and that and let me fix it for you because all I need to know is what you want.
Thank you.
And then I'll give it to you I'll give you 3 of them. Yeah. And I'll beat what we did. Yep. Because I'll know what you want. Yep. And it's figuring, having the confidence in your own skill set and your ability to call your shots and aim your metaphors.
I understand.
But you know what I mean? To tie all that stuff together.
Yeah. I think ultimately you just have to trust yourself and trust in your skills and that the craft is there. It will come out of you if it's meant to. And you just have to trust in that. And I think that is the hardest lesson for this type A, Midwestern raised, like, B school, like, not dropout, but B school left turn, to acknowledge and accept is that, you're enough as a human. You're enough with your training. You just have to go out there and trust that you're enough and lay it out there and leave it on the mic or leave it on the stage and then just go home and enjoy your day. And when I worked in an office, that's not a thing you did. You went home and you drank your day, or you went home and you fretted over your day. And that is the freedom that becoming my own boss and choosing this life allowed me to do.
That's so awesome. That's so awesome. And true. Like I've never felt more relaxed and off the clock than when I'm truly off the clock and got my stuff done.
Yep.
And sometimes things can be crazy.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can be challenging.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, I sleep well, knowing that,
Yeah.
I got my work done.
Right. You can go home and be really present with the people you love.
That's right.
And you're not worried.
Exactly. Dude, I could talk to you for so much longer. I intend to. We just won't be able to record it all.
That's okay.
That's fine.
You're amazing. Thank you so
You're
much for
amazing.
having me.
Oh my God. So are two last questions.
Okay.
Where can people find you on social media if they want to follow you and your work and your blog and all that other kind of stuff?
So if you want to follow me on social media, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Diamond Song. So, and then if you are still on Facebook, and that's okay if you are, it's voiceof.retana, and my name is spelled Ratana, and then my website is retana.net.
Awesome. And do you have anything that's coming out that you can talk about, or would love to, or a project that you've done that you're in particular like, this thing was an amazing thing to be a part of, and I'd love for you to just check it out.
I wish the NDAs would allow me, but the gods of non-disclosure say no right now. I will say that this has been a lovely season for me creatively, and I'm very grateful for the projects that I've worked on, that one day when I can talk about it, I cannot wait to sing their praises.
Amen. Well, that's great. Dude, thank you so much for dropping by.
You.
This was just a great way to...
So lovely.
Yeah. And thank you for joining us, and more episodes coming soon. Peace! This has been All Over Voiceover with Kif VH. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please go to iTunes and give us a positive rating. It truly helps. Follow me on Twitter at KifVH, or on Instagram at KifVH, or on Vero at KifVH. Thanks so much for listening. Talk to you soon. Claim victory and depart the field.
Werewolf?
Yeah,